Hello, I'm David Lynn, and welcome to our special live broadcast of Kitco's annual Mining CEO of the Year Award, coming to you from our headquarters in Montreal. This is the 5th year we are proud to present this prestigious award. It's almost as exciting as the Oscars, but we will refrain from using any violence. Nobody's getting slapped today. Joining us from Vancouver is Michael McCrae, Mining Audience's manager. Welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Glad to be joining you from one of the world's top junior and exploration cities, just 2,700 miles drive to the west of you, David.
Indeed, you are lucky to be in Vancouver. Now, 2021 was a challenging year for gold. In 2020, we had a big run in the metal due to the COVID pandemic, but last year in 2021, we had a challenging environment for the metal. Last year, as you know, the Comex Gold Futures lost $75, while the VanEck Gold Junior Miners index dropped by double digits. However, some select miners and juniors did manage to buck the trend, and we are here to recognize their achievements. Michael, take us away.
That's right, David, and they are our big winners. One of the other trends of 2021 was an emphasis on first-tier mining jurisdictions. We definitely saw that play out in our exploration and development category winner. On the other hand, our mining winner took a different tack.
All right, well, before we begin and dig deep into the announcements, Michael, explain how the winners were selected.
David, we convened a panel of industry experts to choose our nominees and winners. One of the panel's chief considerations was whether the company was able to drive returns. Both our winners were up in 2021, despite how you noted before, David, that the gold miners in a group were trading down.
All right, so we will be giving out 2 awards today. Let's start with the Exploration Development category. Here are the nominees. Jamie Beck, Philo Mining. Tara Christie at Banyan Gold. Alan Coots at Noron Resources. Ewan Downey at I-80 Gold. Jeff Pontius at Corvus Gold. And Chris Taylor at Great Bear Resources. And Michael, who is the winner? Do us the honors, please.
And the winner is, it's Chris Taylor. It's hard to beat the story. Great Bear was sold to Kinross for 1.8 billion Canadian last year. Everybody liked this company. Everybody liked this story. It was a big success for the resource sector as a whole. A point I made to Chris. Chris Taylor, you're Kitco CEO of the year 2021 in the Exploration and Development category. Congratulations, Chris.
Michael, thank you so much.
The $1.8 billion Canadian acquisition of your Great Bear by Kinross was announced in December. What struck me about the deal, Chris, is that everybody was happy about it. It was really viewed as a big boost for the junior sector.
I really appreciate that. It was 12 years in the works, and I have to say, Kinross was really pleasant to deal with throughout the process, and I think they recognized the value of the project early on. I'm very happy to see it in the hands of people that will be very motivated to turn the project into a major mine, and will do so extremely competently.
Chris, let's clear up where you stand. Are you still working for Great Bear?
Michael, I have the privilege to be retired at the moment, other than helping Kinross out with some of the relations and other ongoing activity on the project. I happily am gainfully retired.
Congratulations. Now, Kinross had to leave Russia and its Kupol operation, which is a substantial production contributor. Kinross stock has been lagging its peers. There's no impact upon the deal that you signed?
No, the deal was, the terms were all negotiated beforehand. And one of the reasons we like Kinross as a partner or a successor, I suppose, to Great Bear was that we do have a firm belief in their ability to execute on the project, but also growth in their other properties. And we know they have a strong desire to sort of grow in North America. So we could see benefits for shareholders over the long term. And I think, I hate to say it, but not having those Russian assets tied to the company is probably going to be something that adjusts the valuation of the company relative to its peer group over time. And I think that would be good for Great Bear shareholders that ended up owning some stock from Kinross.
Tell us about the origin story. How'd you find the project and how'd you get it started, Chris?
Well, the project was actually always in the mind of my partner in this, Bob Singh, our VP Exploration. And Bob had seen core from the project many years ago, over 10 years ago. And there's a very well-known prospector in Ontario named Perry English. He was partial owner of the project along with Newmont, brought the project to some other parties first who said no to it, and then brought it to Bob. Bob brought it to me. Bob did a mock-up on the data in 3 dimensions, and it was pretty obvious that it had potential that was just not being recognized. So effectively eyes on it early and follow the data.
Okay, so now you've got something that's interesting. What are the pieces that you need to get to assemble to see this through, Chris?
Well, part of that was expanding the project. When we bought the initial claims, it was about 10% of the final area of the Dixie project. We purchased that 67% interest from Perry English and 33% from Newmont itself. But we ended up using geophysics and some geological sleuthing from Bob to expand the project to over 20 kilometers strike extent. And in fact, it's the expanded property that had the LP fault, the major gold discovery on it. So it was doing the homework, getting out there and staking all the land before we actually did any drilling. That was the key to success here, was putting those pieces together and in fact, buying out the royalty on the project as well, because as you know, we ended up spending out the royalty to our shareholders as well.
When did the story get traction in the investor community, Chris? What did you see that it was really starting to resonate?
You know, that actually began happening in stages. It wasn't one event or one discovery, because we did discover a number of different gold zones on the project. But I would say back in 2018, when we found what we call the Hinge Zone, a Red Lake style high grade gold zone, we got Rob McEwen invested in the company. And Rob was our largest shareholder for a period of time. And that certainly began to attract market interest. But when we've made the LP fault discovery a year later, this was in 2019, that's when momentum really began to come in, because we kept hitting the same rocks and the same gold system kilometer after kilometer. And that's something the industry just hadn't seen in a new greenfields discovery for many years.
Now up to 2021. I assume the acquisition was helped by the decided swing to Canada in 2021. There was the Agnico Kirkland tie-up, and then there was also Newcrest and Pretium, to name a few.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair comment, Michael. Like sometimes the mining industry gets it right. In this case, I think there was a little bit of a crystal ball at play, but there has been a desire for companies to move back to their roots, back into North America, companies that have diversified geographically. They've been running around the world, operating in different jurisdictions. And I think, you know, some of these warning shots like the Centerra experience recently and others have shown that, you know, home is a good place to be if you want to grow, and you want to grow without too many headaches. So that part of the process moving back into North America, that did add some wind to our sails for sure.
Chris, this next question is an apology on behalf of the media and mining. You were near ubiquitous in junior space. I was looking at Google, and they have indexed over 600 videos of you talking about Great Bear. What was the marketing strategy, Chris?
I think, you know, in the case, it was getting my pleasant visage in front of as many eyes as possible, probably not on its own merits, but really just to build awareness about the story. I had Rita Bennett helping me out for many years as our VP Corporate Communications. And the idea was to take a page out of other industries and really try to just become a presence that people had comfort and familiarity with. And I think, you know, if you're telling a story, tell a true story, you know, repeat your message again and again, and show people that they can trust what you're saying, and that what you're saying has a good chance of coming true. And that's our strategy with Great Bear. Talk about a great project, talk about it consistently, talk about it a lot, and make sure the industry understood the nature of what we were onto here.
Just to add on to that, Chris, as well, but you did do thought leadership. You did have interesting things to say about the sector as well as gold movements as well. So you spent some time on that.
Yeah, that's right. You try to have, you know, a reasonable opinion so that you can have a strategy that you lay out to your own board internally and to your shareholders. And it's good to stay ahead of the curve. The industry is always changing. We see that again and again. Some of the geopolitical tensions that are going on right now are of great interest, and they're going to have long-term ramifications. So try to stay ahead of it and try to show people that there's a path forward within the company and that your strategy fits it.
Now, this all ended well, but looking back, Chris, is there anything you would have done differently?
It's hard to say, Michael. I mean, it did end very well for all of us. I think if we could have done anything differently on a personal level, I would have somehow managed to mortgage more of my house and buy more Great Bear shares whenever I had the opportunity. But if I had to think about things that we could have executed a little bit differently, I'd say that I probably wouldn't go through a rights offering process on the spin out from the royalty. That is quite complicated and unfamiliar to many of the banks and brokerages. So anybody paying attention and trying to duplicate that process, save yourself the headache and don't go down that route.
I probably a good short course on finance for you, Chris. How does gold look to you right now?
I try to be pretty neutral on gold, Michael. I mean, right now, it's comforting to me that I have a lot of mining stocks in my portfolio that have exposure to gold. These are uncertain times, and certainly having that exposure does anchor you in certainty. And I'd say gold's performance relative to recent digital alternatives has been very good throughout all the recent turmoil, and that gives me comfort that gold is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is being a haven of stability in uncertain times.
What's next?
For me, there's a number of opportunities I'm looking at now. I'm getting inundated, I would say. Actually, after I get off the interview, I'm headed off to have a beer with somebody that wanted to pitch some ideas at me, and I'm always happy to hear about these. But I joked about being retired when we started the interview, but I'm 44 years old. It's very unlikely that will be a permanent condition. So I'd like to find a good opportunity that I feel could be as rewarding for shareholders as Great Bear was.
Chris, congratulations.
Thank you, Michael. Great to speak again, and talk to you again soon.
Yes, congratulations indeed, Chris. Here is your award. We will be sending this to you shortly. Now, Michael, let's move on to the mining category. Let's take a look at the nominees. In the mining category, we have Peter Bradford, Independence Group; Richard Hyde, West African Resources; Tony McCouche, Kirkland Lake Gold; David Strang, Arrow Copper. And Michael, do us the honors, please. Who is the big winner?
The winner is, David, Richard Hyde, CEO of West African Resources. West African is a story of zigging while everybody else zagged. First-tier mining jurisdictions came to the fore, as Chris did note in the interview, but West African plugged away at its Burkina Faso, nurturing relationships. Those relationships paid off. The mine produced nearly 300,000 ounces in 2021 and is targeting over 400,000 ounces of gold production mid-decade. Earlier, we had a chance to present Richard with his award. Richard Hyde, you're Kitco CEO of the Year for 2021 in the mining category. Congratulations, Richard.
Thank you, Michael. It's a great honour to receive this award on behalf of the team here at West African Resources.
West African Resources exceeded guidance in 2021 and produced 288,000 ounces of gold. It was a good year, Richard.
It was a great year. It was a record year for us. It was just really pleasing that our open pit and underground mining strategies went to plan. Our resources reconciled really well. And it was a challenging year as well, dealing with all of the problems that were thrown up from COVID-19.
What's the plan to get to 400,000 ounces, Richard?
Well, we've just acquired the Kiaka deposit, which is also in Burkina Faso. It's about 45 kilometres to the south of Sanbrado. We announced that last year in November when we acquired the deposit from B2 Gold at GAMS. We believe Kiaka will be a long life plus 200,000 ounce a year project, and in combination with our existing asset, which has got a more than 10-year mine life at Sanbrado, we believe WAF will be producing more than 400,000 ounces a year at a really high margin by 2025.
That was a deal, of course, you did with B2 Gold. What was the deal that you made that both parties could benefit, Richard?
Well, I think we had to strike a fair price and also a fair structure. I mean, there's still a bit of de-risking to do on Kiaka, so we paid $100 million up front, basically in cash and shares to B2 and to GAMS. And then we put a 3% NSR on 2.5 million ounces of production from Kiaka, which obviously we'll start paying that from 2025. So it was really just landing on a deal which was good for both parties and also good for the people in the area and good for Burkina Faso, because Burkina is a developing nation and it needs more investment.
Now, West African is not an overnight success. You started West African in the 2000s. Are there any milestones that you want to single out? Well,
obviously, it's been a story of belief and persistence from everyone at West African Resources, but really the discovery of the M1 South high-grade deposit in 2016 was a turning point for the company. I mean, prior to that, we were slogging away trying to get a small heap leach program, a project up and going, but the high-grade discovery at M1 South just changed the nature of the project and also meant we could switch from a heap leach strategy to a conventional CIL strategy. And obviously the rest has been history, but we drilled, for 4 years non-stop. We haven't stopped drilling. We're still drilling the deposit now. We've drilled it down to a kilometre vertical and we're still hitting the same high grades that we were hitting, nearer surface.
Was the plan always to become a miner, Richard?
No, there's really, I think initially when I started the company 15 years ago, I thought, well, maybe we could put some ground together and joint venture it off to a bigger company. And then, it looked like we could IPO the package that we put together. We ran a sale process in 2018, early in 2018, once we'd made that discovery and we'd done some study work on Sanbrado, which demonstrated it was going to be a robust sort of long life asset. And it kind of coincided with the Canadian markets declining and we didn't really get any decent bids. So we really had to strap ourselves in for the build in mid-2018 onwards. And, we poured our first gold in March 2020.
Now, was that also the discovery? Was that also the turning point for the markets as well? Was that when investors started paying attention?
Look, I think it snuck up on a lot of investors. I remember returning to North America to the Denver Gold Show and to Beaver Creek Precious Metal Summit in September 2019. And, we were well over sort of 2/3 of the way through the build at that point. And that took a lot of investors by surprise because, quite often the feedback was, what, you're actually building it? And we were. We'd raised more than 2.5 times our market cap in December 2018 to build the project. We had 2 equity raisings, which was over 80 million Australian, and we raised a further 200 million US in debt to build the project. So, I mean, that was a pretty big achievement to do that. And then also to bring the project in on time or ahead of schedule and under budget by about 20 million US dollars was a major milestone for us.
Now you are working in Burkina Faso. What was interesting about 2021 is that all of the miners seem to turn their attention to first-tier jurisdictions, namely Canada, where you saw the deals with Agnico, KL, and then also the takeout of Pretium by Newcrest. You really found success going the other way, Richard.
So we just stuck to what we kind of good at, which I think we know the West African space really well. We've actually had a very good experience working in Burkina Faso. I mean, there's real and perceived risks there, and there are definitely real risks. It's no surprise that Burkina's had a lot of challenges over the last 5 years with security in the north and the east of the country. But the area that we're operating in Burkina, which is sort of central and southern, and also Kiaka is further south of Sanbrado again, we've had a good experience working with the local communities and stakeholders. We've actually had very good support from the government over the last few years. To bring the project in on budget and the first sort of year and a half of production. So our experience has been positive, and one of the most important things about Burkina is it's got a fantastic geology. So most of the country is prospective for gold, and it really didn't get a lot of exploration in the sort of 1990s and 2000s. So it's been seeing a lot more exploration up until about 2015, and obviously those discoveries are being developed now or being mined now. And also the people. We've got wonderful people in Burkina Faso who are hardworking and honest, and we've just had a very good experience working there.
ESG has really come to the fore in the last year. What has been some of your keys to actually maintaining buy-in by the local community, Richard?
Well, it's something that's very hard to do as an exploration company. And it's, obviously we've made this transition now, and it's something that's really pleasing to see that you're making a difference in people's lives. So, in the last 2 years, West Africans either built or funded 3 schools. So education is really important, and in the areas that we're operating in Burkina Faso, literacy rates are very low for both children and adults. That's something we're focusing on. We've also added solar power to 5 schools, so that means that kids and adults can actually study at night time outside their normal sort of day-to-day activities, which is a real benefit. We've got a lot of other programs in agriculture and poultry farming. We put about $5 million into local programs in 2021. We also paid about $5 million into the local development fund in 2021 as well. So we're making a real positive impact, and we're getting that back from the community with the support that we've received.
Lastly, Richard, if you're starting this all over again from scratch, what will you establish first off to increase your chances of success?
Look, I think if our team were to go start again, hypothetically, we would probably look for a very solid development project to go and get our teeth into early, because exploration is really tough. We've done a very good job with exploration, but you can do everything right and still not find a deposit, and that's just the reality. So, with West African, the company was incorporated in 2007. We acquired a Canadian company, Channel Resources, in 2013. We didn't make a high-grade discovery until 2016. So we managed to keep the company going for quite a long time before we really had tangible success. So I think if I was going to do it again, I'd look for a good development asset. Like, we admire B2 Gold an awful lot. They're a company that we kind of aspire to replicating their success through what we're doing, and that's through developing good assets. And at the end of it, we want to have a number of fairly new, solid operating plants. So we're not really looking for acquiring operating assets. We're looking for further development projects. So once we bed down Kiaka, that's what we'll be focusing on. And failing that, we'll be paying dividends or buying back shares, because the company's going to be making a lot of cash in 2025 and onwards.
Richard, congratulations, and thanks for speaking with Kitco.
Michael, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the award, and on behalf of myself and also the team here at West African Resources.
Congratulations again, Richard, and we will be sending this very prestigious award your way. Michael, I believe you have something fun for us now?
Yes, indeed, David. We had the winners ask a question of each other, and I really like this question from Richard Hyde. I'll let him take it away. Richard's question for Chris Taylor of Great Bear.
Hi, Chris. It's Richard Hyde here from West African Resources. Congratulations on your win. Watching from here in Australia, the transaction with Kinross has clearly delivered significant value for your shareholders. To do this without wrapping a resource number around the projects or without a study is remarkable, and perhaps a contrast in the way we developed our project in West Africa, and perhaps a different approach to the way most Australian companies approach development projects. How did you manage this process, and was there pressure from different groups in your business, so shareholders or advisors, to report a resource or a study to see what the economics on Dixie might look like?
Oh, Richard, thank you very much for the question. And first off, let me offer my congratulations on your win as well. Yes, there's always pressure in order to release a resource. And one of the difficulties that we'd have is that with a discovery like Dixie, any resource that we put out too early on would not be representative of the system as a whole. And, in particular with these sort of orogenic gold systems that can go down to enormous depths, like the adjacent Red Lake mine, like the Hemlo deposit, trying to wrap a meaningful number around the very top of the system, the areas that you first began doing your exploration, would have been relatively meaningless, and I think actually misleading to shareholders. So in that sense, what we took was the approach where we would release all the data, like we released every interval, every composite assay, and then every individual sub-level assay that made up the composites from key drill holes throughout the LP fault discovery. And what that meant was that instead of publishing a resource and then an update and then an update, we had the industry as a whole and many mining companies throughout the industry building their own resources for years prior to the transaction occurring. And what they were seeing as we put out assay results and that really good transparent level of disclosure that we had was that their assay numbers, their resource numbers kept expanding and expanding, and the system kept expanding and expanding. And they were wrapping mine plans, economic studies, their sort of internal feasibility sort of mechanics around the LP discovery, the other zones at Dixie in real time as we were publishing the data. So I think it was a more efficient approach to getting the industry to understand what we found. And it didn't put us in a corner where the market perception was that we were only the open pit portion of the resource or only a starter pit portion of the resource. They could see the entirety of the project coming together in real time. Richard, all of us are following the news these days, and we're seeing that internationally it's becoming more and more challenging to operate as a mining company, as exploration companies, certainly within the industry. And certainly following the Russian actions in Ukraine recently, I've heard of a number of supply chain disruptions across the supply chain, across the globe. And I'm wondering, has this affected any of West African's operations? And does it in fact impact your future plans for expansion? You've done an incredible job recently layering on additional acquisitions and operations in West Africa. So does this impact your future plans for growth?
Well, first of all, thanks, Chris, for your question, and congratulations on winning your award. So far, so good. West Africa hasn't seen any major issues with supply chain logistics issues. We've been dealing with them for 2 years with COVID. We also have our emulsion factory on site, which allows us to manufacture most of our explosives and covers our needs for the project. We are obviously watching closely what's happening in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, and also with the development of Kiaka coming up, we're keenly watching what's happening with steel prices and also the supply of major equipment out of Europe, because for Sanbrado, for example, that's where most of our key equipment came from. So we're watching very closely at the moment, and we're hopeful that things resolve as quickly as possible. But we're also mindful that there's risks in the world everywhere at the moment, and it's one of the good reasons why you should own gold.
Congratulations to the winners and nominees. Also, thanks to our panel. There was a lot of work that went into choosing, and also thanks to sharing this occasion with David Lynn. David.
Well, thank you, Michael, for organizing this incredible event. It was all because of your hard work that we are here today. So thank you. And congratulations again to the winners, Chris Taylor at Great Bear Resources and Richard Hyde at West African Resources. And to the audience, thank you for joining us. We always welcome your feedback, so we'd love to hear from you. I'm David Lynn, and you are watching Kitco Mining. Have a good night.